Welcome to the Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast. Frank talk about sex and dating.
Welcome to Straight from the Source's Mouth. This is what I'm calling bonus episode number 1. I'm not quite ready for season 3, but I didn't want to have you guys waiting. And we've talked about this topic a few times. So I have Jennifer here today. We're going to talk about FetLife. And as I mentioned, we mentioned it in several episodes, but we haven't actually gone into the details of how it works and how to find it. So that is what we're going to do. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi. So I know I had listened to your podcast and I had heard it in a number of episodes. I was like, oh, I know that. And then I had come back to you and talked to you about it. And that's where we kind of got to the point where it's like, yeah, okay, maybe we want to do an episode that kind of like illuminates what FetLife is all about a little bit more, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So how did I get there, right? So I was down in Carolina, kind of like in a new phase in my life. And I had actually, through roundabout, got involved with a kind of a kink and swing group of friends and started getting into what we call, the scene, right? And it was through them that I had actually learned about FetLife in order to like branch out and meet different people with the same proclivities, or kind of explore new ones that you weren't even aware of, or other things you didn't even think you would be interested in. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, that sounds really interesting. So in that new phase of my life, I was kind of looking for like, dating and things like that. And I had hit all the usuals, right? The dating apps, eHarmony, Match, Bumble. And a lot of those, the issue is with them, like eHarmony might be great for trying to match up like personalities. But if you have, it really doesn't go into the physical aspect of a relationship very much. And if you have like a really high sex drive, or you have particular sexual interests, and you could be like getting on with somebody and you think it's great, and then that topic comes up, and now the whole thing comes crashing down. And or you never even got a chance to meet in the first place because the topic comes up and then they ghost you because they think you're weird or something. And those limitations really started to kind of hit home, and that's why I really tried to started to get into FetLife, because the lack of the physical aspect and the sexual aspect in those traditional dating apps. And the kind of the cool thing with FetLife is it's not a dating app. It's a lot more like Facebook for people with various kinks and sexual interest and things like that. And all you have to do really, if you want to sign up for it, is go to FetLife.com and sign up for a profile. It's free, right? You sign up for a profile like you would any other kind of social networking app. And on it, most people, I don't think I've ever seen anybody actually use their name on their profile name. It's just not something that's done. I'm not going to throw mine out there right now on this episode of what mine is. But when you set up the profile, you have your profile name, so it gives you a page, just like you would. You have a profile page on Facebook, but you can have one here on FetLife. It throws out your age, your gender, and then kind of like sexual role. So you could put, you could be a sub, you could be a top, you could be primal, you could be dom, you could be any kind of those different roles that they might have. And there's a whole bunch listed that you wouldn't have even thought existed or didn't even know anything about. I personally chose sub for mine, as in submissive. It then lists your city, your state, your country. And if you don't want those listed, sometimes people put Antarctica because they don't want people like searching them in the place they live or something. You can put pictures on there. And the nice thing is there's no censorship for the pictures. So mine have some nudity. Mine have some with other folks doing things together and things like that. And some people won't put their face on any. or they'll have their face cut off, they'll have it, blacked out or like that. But you can put all those different pictures. You're not hiding anything. You can throw, here's my body, here's what I like to do. There's no surprises. Nobody's going to feel like they got catfished or something like that, right? Where it's like you throw out a facade and then you get sucked in and you find out the person was full of, malarkey. In this case, no, it's all out there. And if somebody doesn't lay it out there with some of the pictures, you'd be like, hey, you got some pictures? Because I don't see anything of you. And in this platform, that's accepted because people get it. You're there for, a physical aspect. And it's not even just the physical aspect, because you can also get into the emotional aspect. And you can talk about what relationships you're currently in. Mine lists, it's complicated because my long-term relationship is coming to an end, which is, again, that was the change in my life that I was talking about. You put your roles. So mine say submissive, bottom, swinger, sensualist, and exhibitionist. Sexual orientation, mine say pansexual and bisexual. And how active you are. So I live the lifestyle when I can. Other people put, they live at 24/7. I don't know if you have like a live-in slave or something. Think like the Gimp, from Pulp Fiction or something, where it's like 24/7. And then what you're looking for. So you can put, you're looking for a mentor, you're looking for a femdom, you're looking for this, you're looking for that. And then for me, I'm looking for a lifetime relationship or a relationship. So through this venue, I'm kind of using it as a dating app and social media. And that's kind of cool, where it has that dual aspect. You have a description like you would any other profile, right? And you can write, you get a lot of space to put your description about yourself. It lists how many friends I have. People can see who my friends are. I have 178 followers. I have 53 friends. I'm following 6 people. Then you can also join groups, right? Which is really cool. And again, this is where it's like Facebook, where you can get you can join groups and you network and you start to meet people, either around the world or, where you live. So you can do a search. Hey, I want to look up exhibitionists in Denver, Colorado. And it'll come up with different lists of people who that's part of their profile somewhere. And then you can kind of connect with those people. Like, hey, I'm going to be moving to Denver and I want to see who's involved in this kind of stuff before I go there. Maybe set up a few dates or make some friends, kind of internet friends, before I get to the location I'm even getting to. And in fact, I'm away from home right now and I'm doing that for Buffalo, where I'm from. And then groups, just to give you an idea of some of the groups. I have the page up, by the way. I'm looking at, the page simultaneously. And, I'm a member of BDSM Buffalo, Buffalo Area Hookup, Buffalo Exhibitionist, Buffalo Group Fun, Buffalo Kink Community, Buffalo Real Play Public or Private, Buffalo Swingers. And then I had some Carolina stuff from when I was down in Carolina. And what else do I got? I could put videos up there. It lists my latest activity, which is kind of like my feed, right? You think of again, I'm using this Facebook comparison because people are so familiar with that. So there's it's like a feed of different activity I've had. So maybe I became friends with, Big Daddy, or I became friends with Fear Dear Held, or friends with My Wolf Within, and different folks like that. And then it lists, you can list your fetishes, both things you're totally into and things you're curious about. And the really cool thing there is they give you this massive list of fetishes that you could possibly be into. And the reason it's so massive is because anybody can add one. So if you create one for yourself on your own profile, because you can type in, that now adds to the pool of possible fetishes that somebody could select when they're building their profile. And it goes everywhere.
Does it have I was going to ask, does it have the definition of what it is too?
Not exactly. So you kind of have to have a little bit of an idea, but some of them are pretty obvious, right? So in fact, most of them are. So just to give you an example, on mine, They range from affectionate domination, receiving, because you can indicate whether you want to receive something, give something, or you're just into it in general. I have barehanded spanking, receiving, being called a good girl, receiving. And I love this one. This popped up. My friend had this one, and I was like, oh, I'm putting this one. Being pushed up against a wall in a passionate kiss. Who doesn't love that? Yeah. What else? And there's some I almost feel like, it's almost, too hot for this show even just to mention, but because there's just so many. Forehead kisses, receiving, love that. Kissing, outdoor sex, into tattoos, threesomes, pegging, right? If you heard
We've
of that.
had a couple
right?
episodes on that. Yeah.
Whatever. There's just so many. And I'm the curious about. So, for example, I have like making home movies and Sex in the Cemetery. I'm curious about that. So somebody might like search that up. Go, oh, hey, this is a woman in Buffalo. She's curious about Sex in the Cemetery. I'm down with that. I'm going to contact her. And the next thing you know, then you're doing something, hopefully you don't get arrested. So, yeah, that's kind of like the FetLife platform, as it stands. And there's events too. So you can search events in the area you live in to see if there's like sex parties or, get-togethers, mutual masturbation sessions. And I did that. I discovered that when I was down in Carolina because I had actually went to some sex parties in the Carolinas. And I had met these people through FetLife. And it was kind of cool getting tied into that. And I still talk to that group that I have down in Carolina. Unfortunately, I'm not, going back there. So I'm not going to probably get down there for play parties. But that's the thing is I've tied into what's going on in my hometown because ahead of going back there. And for example, I found out about a sex club up in between Buffalo and Toronto in Canada that I didn't even know existed. And it's like this phenomenal club. I looked online and it's just like everything you could possibly imagine and theme nights and this and that. And there's a huge population in the area between Toronto and Buffalo, on the Canadian side. And so I could just imagine just like how busy and alive this place is. I would have never known about that if I had not been on FetLife. And I think it's as good for somebody who's got kinks and they're like, wow, I really knew this about myself. I knew I had this kink, but I'm too ashamed or embarrassed to tell anybody about it. Or, hi, how are you? I like to whatever. And, or they're like, boy, something's kind of missing or this or that. And you start tying into this FetLife thing and you're like, oh, I didn't know about that. Or that sounds really great. Or I'd really be interested in that. Or I'd like to try that. And this platform just puts it all out there. There's no, you just lay it out. It's up front and you don't have to have those like awkward conversations because, everybody's out there, so it's not really a big deal at all.
Yeah, I mentioned to you there was a guy who is like into cuckolding and he just will not tell his current girlfriend. Like he just is sure she's going to be weirded out by it or whatever. So he's just, and if he was on this kind of site or just, if more people were free to say those kinds of things. Yeah. Right.
And if he would have gotten on that site, one, I'm not advocating going out and cheating on somebody. In fact, in my edit, because I get quite a bit of interest in my profile. That's not to be boastful, it's just true. But one of my lines, I say, I'm also open to the right play partners, as opposed to a relationship or something like that. Play partner, just like, hey, it's somebody, it's kind of think of like friends with benefits, right? Somebody you play with sometimes. But I put a big but in capital letters, right? But if you are married and not in either an open relationship or separated, please do not reach out to me. I'm not going to get involved with someone married if their spouse is not aware and approves, right? So there is a level of ethics, and some people's ethics are stronger than others. And so I put that out there. And that's from experience too, because I would have somebody like try to hook up with me, and then I would get like these red flags, like, what do you mean you don't want to meet for coffee first? Or what do you mean you don't want to do this? Or what do you mean you want to do that? And I end up hooking up anyways. And then on the way out the door, they're like, oh, I'm married. It's like, well, that explains it. So, so I've found that it's kind of necessary sometimes. But that's the point. So I'm not advocating this person you're talking about go out and cheat, but they could find people that are interested in that. Or if they're looking for a significant other in the first place, that could be a platform, because if that's something they're really into, they can find somebody there. And, what does it hurt to have a date, right? Like, it doesn't mean you have to absolutely, especially if you're looking for maybe a relationship versus, versus just hooking up. You're going to want to set up a coffee date, get to know the person, see if you click. You don't have to jump right into bed with these people, but at least that if you're going down a path with them, that you guys are compatible on these other levels. And that's what it offers. Did you want to go into where are we at? 16 minutes.
Well, I was going to say, did you want to... did you want to talk about why you really like the site, what's your situation and why it benefits you so much?
So, as I told you, what was it? It was just last week, right? That I told you.
Yeah, a couple of days ago.
And you've known me for a couple months now, I think, at least. When did you? Yeah, somewhere like a couple months. Anyway, so I am transgender. I'm a trans woman. And I'm in this situation where I pass, like at the stealth level, where 99% of people have no idea that I'm transgender unless I tell them. And this creates kind of like difficulties or challenges, like in the dating scene, right? So if I did not pass and somebody saw me out, they're going to know or they're going to not know, and they're going to have something to do with me or they're not going to have something to do with me. Furthermore, that also works in the dating apps, right? If I'm obviously, the dating apps, even where you only have a choice between man or woman, that you don't even get a chance to put like trans woman or something like that. If you're obviously don't pass, somebody's still going to be able to take you or leave you. And that's their proclivity, and they're free to do that. I don't ascribe to that whole, like, well, if you don't like me, you're bigoted. Well, I don't think so. People have their preferences. But the problem for me, and you're like, it's a nice problem to have. There's a lot of trans people who say that'd be a wonderful problem to have. The problem for me is that it can create some real problems. So I would be out. What's the difficulty in meeting people out? I would be out, and before I had enough feedback to know that I really, passed at the stealth level where people really wouldn't figure it out even after having a conversation with me. I had a situation where I hooked up with a guy. I went out. He had no idea until he pulled my pants down. And that can be, it turned out okay, but that could be like really dangerous. So I learned that when I'm out, at the very least, I have to have that awkward conversation if I think I'm interested in somebody. And that's not always a fun conversation to have because you don't know what the reaction is going to be. They could go from being really nice to you all of a sudden to like freaking out. And at least if they freaked out in the bar or wherever, it's safer,
Yeah,
but you still got to go through that emotional thing. Like, really? Like, you were all into me until you knew this. Now, and granted, I'm pre-op, although I will be post-op down the road. But I am pre-op, so that adds that whole layer of, like, they're going to find out at some point when the clothes come off. So when I figured out that, when I got that kind of feedback to realize that I passed at that level, then I had to make sure I told people, and I didn't really like that. And then the dating apps. Let me tell you, and maybe you could have somebody rebut this in the future on some show, but guys don't read the descriptions. So what I found is I put pictures on the traditional dating apps, and I put in big, bold, capitalized letters, I am transgender, pre-op, this, that, got to be upfront about it, la-di-da. And I would still get, say, and I'm just going to use for sake of argument, simple numbers. I would get 9 guys sending me messages. And I would be like, hey, did you read my description? Because experience taught me that you didn't. And they'd go back and reread it. And from that 9, 3 would just straight up ghost me, like no response, right? 3 would come back and be like, thanks for pointing that out. I'm not interested, which is respectable because at least they responded. And then another 3 would continue to show some interest in that. Either, because like maybe they're like, hey, I'm just attracted to femininity or in general or something like that. And, but that gets really annoying. And I didn't really learn that lesson about putting that in big bold letters when I started getting a bunch of hits on my profile, because they love the pretty picture, just hit a bunch of hits on my profile. And I'm engaging with these people over and over and over again. And then like, I got to go through that whole thing, like, hey, guess what? And then getting ghosted or something, which really stinks, right? FetLife, it's right up there. So my gender on FetLife is TG. Anybody who's contacting me knows I'm transgender. So they might see a pretty picture, and they know what that pretty picture comes with. Furthermore, even if they didn't read the profile, they're looking at the pictures. And my pictures are full, right? So there's no way they're not going to know up front. So if somebody's contacting me, they know exactly what they're getting into. And so for somebody in a situation like mine, more unique, more unique situation, FetLife offers an opportunity to be able to meet a bunch of people where I don't have to go through that awkward, like, what do they think, or, this or that, because I already know where they're at with it. From there, I only have to figure out whether or not they're trying to chase me down because they want to look at me like a fetish toy or something, or if they're just open to, they have a wider range in their sexuality, or if they come to realize for themselves that they're attracted to femininity and a more general female form and female aura. And, that they've learned that, for them personally, the particular genitalia they can, is not as big a deal for them. Of course, even after I get my surgery, I'm still going to leave TG as my gender because I think, and I think it's ethical to let people know that, not in my daily life, because my daily life I don't, but to let people know that if I have a chance of that I'm going to be intimate with them, they should have the ability to have informed consent. Because if I'm not telling them, I'm withholding that from them, and I think that's ethically wrong.
I agreed when you told me that the other day, and just corroborating that I had no idea. When you told me you wanted to do this aspect of the FetLife episode, I was like looking at you like, why? And then you're finally like saying that you're trans. I'm like, oh, I thought I wasn't even sure if you were like transitioning to a man because you're already a woman or what was going on. So
right.
So you pass as a woman.
Yeah. Now, and of course, part of that aspect that I had mentioned is so that people understand, because there's a lot of people who don't. Because I remember the term transgender came up on one, to my knowledge, only one of your previous podcasts, and it was only alluded to for like a second. And it was resolved at that point, well, like maybe that's a topic for another podcast, right? Because it's such a complex thing with so many layers to unpack. And just for your listeners who don't kind of know what the deal is with transgender, and keep in mind, like I am not like the activist type. I'm actually, a pretty conservative person, right? So I'm not coming from that, I'm trying to, convince everybody of something. But I just want to relay, what I think are facts. And the fact is somebody that is genuinely transgender, who really is, right? Who's discerned it over time and absolutely knows and isn't a tweener who doesn't really know anything about themselves yet. Somebody, I came to know that I was transgender. I figured it out by the age of 22. Kind of from age 16 to 22 is when I was figuring it out. And then I didn't even fully, because there was a lot of times in my life that I was getting there, but I didn't even fully act on it until I was 46 is when I started really into it. for somebody who's truly transgender, the disconnect is between their internally experienced gender in their mind. And that is hardwired. You know, that is like inborn. What is your gender identity? You learn about it through the interaction in the social setting, but you come to see like, hey, this is where I fit in. And then you have your biological sex, which is real. So gender is real, biological sex is real. And I don't ascribe to it's a social construct thing. No, it's real. It's there. For most people, that lines up nicely, so there's no issue. Their biological sex and their gender identity completely line up perfectly, and then they can choose to express that gender identity however they want to, whether they want to be like Boy George or like The Rock, right? You know, they can express it to whatever extreme they want, but their gender identity was inborn. Expression is a totally separate thing. And for those of us who are transgender, there's a disconnect. So for me, my gender identity inside my brain, the way my brain is constructed, whatever like that, was always female. And my outward biological appearance was largely male. Now, the wrinkle, for people who don't know, there is a thing called intersex. You might have heard like the old term hermaphrodite. I'm actually intersex, and I didn't discover this until I had one of the interim surgeries on the way to sexual reassignment surgery, where I had my gonads removed. And at that time, it was actually discovered the one gonad, which we thought was an undescended testicle that I had surgically moved down when I was 3 years old. Turns out it was a largely, not entirely, because my estrogen was actually elevated a little bit, but it was a kind of a dormant-ish ovary. And it actually turns out that I'm intersex, and I'm a mosaic of XX and XY chromosomes, and that also means that I probably have some other female parts internally that were, kind of hidden or something like that, because my external presentation, genitalia-wise, was completely male. There are varying degrees of that external genitalia presentation. Some are like both are completely external, right? Some, and then from there it goes by degrees, so not everybody's the same of how it fully presents itself. The causes of how somebody is intersex, not entirely clear. There's a lot of theories, whether it's like, 2 eggs fused on early on or something like that, and you had the potential to be twins, but instead you're like one person. There's a lot of different theories, but that's what they are. And that made a lot of sense, and then also allowed me to have that successful transition at such an advanced age, because the estrogen and stuff took to my body because I had the receptors and stuff that were there already. Most people who transition at my age have a much harder time than I did. So I've been pretty lucky on that account. But that's what, the deal is with someone who's transgender. It's really that simple. And there are more folks like us than you would imagine that just want to kind of go about and live their lives and not be a big statement. And it's unfortunate that there's a lot of banging heads and consternation from both sides, from the loudest people, from the both sides of this issue, which is why I love Living Stealth, because I want nothing to do with that mess of people, yelling back and forth at each other. I just want to live my life,
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. Like, this would be a good segment because we've talked about FitLife, but we haven't. So we didn't explain it until now. And then transgender, like you said, we just briefly touched on it in one episode. So for those that weren't aware of all the intricacies around it.
Yeah, and I had actually, there was in our current location, there was another trans woman. And she had actually she never really had sex before her transition. In fact, she's a virgin, on all accounts. And she was interested in, maybe finally having sex or maybe, but before she got sexual reassignment surgery, she was like, well, I kind of want to know, like, how do I function with the genitalia I have? What do I like? What do I do not like? Maybe I don't want to, all these different questions like that. And I told her, I go, get on FetLife, put your profile out there. You'll find plenty of play partners that will accept you exactly as you are, know what you're all about, know what you're going for, And then you can do that, all of that exploration you need to do as you figure yourself out for the, those last steps. And make those decisions whether or not you want to, get the full surgeries and such. So that's really, the advantage of FetLife, particularly for those people where sex is important in their lives, and furthermore, where they may have some unique aspects to their sexual life which are important for them, either because their particular interests, like the list of 92 fetishes I have on my profile, or their particular life circumstances, like being transgender like I am.
Yeah, and they have happy hours where you can just meet people and, like you said, you can do nothing about it and just talk to people, or you can try a few things and do one and done and be like, yeah, that wasn't really for me.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever you want to do. But it's just good to know what's out there.
Absolutely. Any kind of events, the get-togethers, a happy hour, just getting into a chat room to learn more about something, to see, like, do I even want to meet people that are, face-to-face? I might be interested in a particular fetish or something. So, yeah, it's a really great platform for that. It really is. So it's made things a lot easier for me. I have like 6 dates set up for when I go home already. And I would have more, but I can only mentally deal with so much. So I actually I updated my profile to say, like, hey, I love the attention, but I'm not really going to respond to anybody for a bit because I got too much to deal with already. So, yeah. It's fruitful.
All right. Well, thank you very much for telling us about this idea, or not this idea, but this site and what's going on with you. And like I said, I can't wait for season 3, or I have to wait for season 3, but I wanted to get a couple episodes in there. So this is bonus episode number 1. And if you liked it, please follow, subscribe, like, comment, and love to hear what you think about the episode. And hopefully we'll have a bonus episode 2 or 3 on a couple more topics. But thank you again, Jennifer, for being here.
Absolutely. No problem.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye.
Frank Talk, Sex and Dating educates.